welcome back, South by East fans, friends, fam, all of y'all to the intersection. Today, we're going to be talking about a magic bullet solution. Happy Election Day. And this right here, this podcast that you sent me from the NPR, what's it called?
Consider This.
Consider This podcast on NPR was so interesting. They were talking about universal income. Now, I heard of universal health care. That's contentious enough, but universal income, this was really kind of blowing my mind, John.
Yeah.
So what we got here?
Yeah, so there's this concept that says that every single person should make a base level income just for being alive and breathing kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so some communities are trying this out and saying like this is the solution to raising people out of poverty, to closing a lot of gaps that exist in our society. And so it's one of those deals of looking at this where often we hear ideas like this and they sound really good. And then you wonder, like, if they're so good, then why are people not implementing them everywhere?
Right.
One of the quick short answers, the easy answer could be like, man, because people are heartless. Nobody wants to see people help. Everybody wants to see. And I'm like, one of the things we talk about often on here is we have to reject easy answers, right? We have to reject easy answers. And we should also reject answers that cause us to think of anyone else in the worst light.
Right.
Because we wouldn't want to be thought of in that way. And so the podcast kind of goes into that solution.
So one of the things in that podcast that stuck out to me, number one is this, and here we put a lot of energy into how we name things, what we do with things, branding, because I think framing is important, because story is important, and how you frame things shapes a story. So for one, early into the podcast, they stopped using the term universal income, which I think was smart, because I don't think universal income really communicates what they want to say, and they start saying guaranteed income. And I think that's a better solution. Why would I argue about that? Because language creates culture, and culture trumps strategy every day of the week. That's really important. And so what they were actually doing was low-income households would receive $500 to $1,000 a month for maybe a year or two, very similar to the type of supplements, income supplements that we saw around the time of the pandemic. So for one, I think that's a lot better than thinking just universal, we pull from your income, get to someone else's income, ultra-communism type of thoughts. And so I thought that made a big difference. And here's part of the reason why I like that term, guaranteed income. If you look, because I feel both ways. I have some things where I'm opposed to this, and I have some things where I think it could be helpful. One of the ways I think it could be helpful is research shows that people who are in despondent poverty, like continuous deep poverty, their minds reflect the same thing as someone who is in consistent fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And so when you are in deep, consistent poverty, you don't know where your next meal is coming from. You actually look at the world in the same way as someone who's always in crisis, which means that your long-term decision-making is affected. It means that your ability to respond to stress is affected. And so when you're always in that situation, then it makes it hard to do things like budget or save, and especially if you already have more month than you have money. And so the idea of having, all right, I know where this next check is coming from, over time can potentially lead to people making better decisions while being in poverty.
You about to kick me off the show.
Go ahead.
Well, because my deal is this, man. Here's the deal. I'm in this nonprofit sector, okay?
Yeah.
And as I go through this work and I take part in this work, man, I remember growing up in a single parent household and just struggling and different things of that nature. And at that time, money could solve every problem I had, I felt like.
Yeah.
And then I was blessed to go to college and got out and worked for, at that time, chemical engineering was the degree that you could come straight out of a 4-year college with and make the most money with. And so I was blessed in that way. And here's what I discovered. At first, I still had money problems.
Yeah. And why is that, John? and why is that?
Because money didn't solve all my problems. when you don't have money, it like man, that is your go-to. And here's the deal: I feel like a lot of times, in the nonprofit work, our laziest answers are just throw more money at it.
Write a check.
And for
Find
us
somebody to
that's
write a
doing the
check.
work, that's been in it for a while, we know that you can't solve a lot of the problems just by throwing the money at it. So here's the deal. I agree that man, there needs to be some supplement. I was actually on that with prolonging the earned income child tax credit kind of
Yeah.
deal that came
Yeah.
out, and how it really raised some things out of poverty. But then we saw the impact on inflation with the extra money into the environment. And so you're gonna have that. And if people start knowing that families below the line of poverty start getting this extra amount of money and it goes to everyone, then people are just gonna raise prices because folks are out to make a
It's
profit.
just good business.
And
It's just good business.
so it makes things even more expensive. And so you've heard me say this before, bro. I believe that tools often precede skill. So I do see there's some good cases to send the extra resources and dollars, but I think they should always be accompanied by
Tools.
something that helps build a skill set.
Right.
And so the one of the programs that I wrote up that I am actually in beginning conversations around launching a 4-year program on. It's kind of an embrace program where it's a program that looks at kind of a housing first model, helping people pay for their housing and subsidize that, but also providing the wraparound case management services, mental health services, if there's substance use treatment needs, providing those, providing help with childcare. Why? Because also, if you follow me on social media, I've been talking a lot about this term called ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employee. It really defines the working for, and it started out with the United Way of New Jersey, and it's spread to like over 30 states now. And it tells about people who live above the poverty line, but below the amount needed in their communities to really make ends meet.
Right.
And so we have that, and I think things like this guaranteed income could really help move the needle on that. But I think a lot of times there are more, I just see this on a weekly basis where there are actually resources available to help people with the needs they have, but either they don't know that they exist, or two, they are having too much trouble navigating the system required for them to access those things. And so I think that if we had more resources that helped people navigate the systems to access the resources that were available, then that would move the needle, and it would decrease some of the need for additional dollars, because those dollars have to come from somewhere. And that's what I think that people often don't understand. Like on our page, on our South by East page, if you've been following the last couple of weeks, we've been doing some polls around what do we feel is the affordable cost for different things, like the cost of a house, the rent for a house, the cost for infant care, the cost for toddler care, the cost for entertainment, the cost for car payment plus insurance. And then just saying, giving some insight on should you rent or buy in this market, and how to use the tools out there to actually decide on that. And so those have been out there. And so we're trying to help people have access to tools and really think about this. And often what I see is that everyone thinks that we should charge the absolute lowest for all these items, but on the flip side of it, they want the people who work in these industries to be well cared for.
Right.
And so there's a tension there, man.
So John, it sounds like what you're saying is giving people money is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And I think there's two good examples that we can point to even before the Embrace program, which I'm excited about that. I've heard you talk about that before, and I'm excited to see something like that happen. One of the things is in the article, they talk near the end of the article where they say, hey, just giving people dollars is not sustainable forever. So how much time does it take for a family to get the money, to get this money and for it to supplement to a place where now they can raise their household income? And they're like, these are the type of studies that need to be done. And so like there's two examples where I feel like this is working well. One is when you're meeting a need and then using that met need to fill other needs. So helping people navigate systems. When we did the working process concert, when we did the Work in Process concert and mental health resource fair, we saw 56% of the people who attended took home or signed up for additional resources. And we're still seeing people from that concert signing up for additional spiritual, mental health resources and things like the pantry, right? Like a pantry that we have here. So it's like, that's effective of meeting people where they're at and then using that as an opportunity to help them navigate systems. The second great example is the Southside Filling Station, which is the pantry that started here in the building, the Client Choice Pantry. In there, I've looked at some of the reports that you sent out about that, looking at the high amount of people who come to receive services from the Southside Filling Station, who then sign up for or start attending additional resources like SNAP Ed, which helps them learn how to cook and do things in an affordable way, signing up for other health resources, and all of those things feed into their overall well-being, including their financial health. And so that's the one thing that I looked at with this, where I was like, the piece that's missing is I'm like, yo, this is great, and we need to study and see how to do this best. But if we're not also partnering it with resources, it will eventually become toxic.
And the thing about that Southside Filling Station is the case management and different things that happens there is proactive.
Exactly.
So rather than the person asking us for connection to those resources, we actually reach out to them and say, we have looked at your data and we think that you're eligible for these other things, and we want to help you
connect with them.
Connect with them and walk through the system and have everything you need. And so with that study that I proposed to KHI and that we're on the beginning stages of kind of trying to put together, it would look at finding families in key strategic areas and then studying two things, or a couple of things. One, do we have the resources necessary in our ecosystem to raise a family from below the line of poverty to above the line of poverty over a 4-year period? If they're above the line of poverty but under the ALICE threshold, do we have the resources to raise them from below the ALICE threshold to above it? Then second, if we don't have those resources, then that's what we should as a community be pouring resources into creating. But then if we do have the resources to help a family do that, but they're ineffective, how can we make them actually effective? And then the last one is this: we can't boil the ocean. We don't have infinite resources. So what resource or service are we providing to families that makes the largest impact on moving them to a healthy and stable place? And I want to measure a couple things: economic stability, socio-emotional health, and educational attainment of children in that family. And so I want to see that over a 4-year period. And so that's why I'm trying to partner with Kansas Health Institute, which is the premier research study organization within our community and within our state, with some other nonprofits, getting them involved, because we're not the end all be all, but seeing how that goes. And that's going to mean, like as you heard, that's going to mean actually finding some financial resources to help these families out with to see, but knowing, man, that can't be the end of it. It can't just be a check alone. Our time has to go with the funds that we send, but most of all, our compassion and love and care for being in community.
Yeah, man. And so we don't do a whole lot of self-promotion here. You see that. We don't use this platform as commercials for us. But I don't work for Sense, so sue me. I want to make sure we include in the show notes Sense website, and so that we can go out there and be a part of the proactive solutions that we see. If we see issues in our community and we know that there are solutions, we know that there is work already being done, we shouldn't just talk about it on the internet, but we should go be a part of the solutions that we see. And some of us can be a part of developing even better solutions and tweaking those things. So I want to call all of us to look into how we can be a part of the change in our communities. And if you don't live in the Hi-Crest community, or if you don't live in Topeka, you don't have access to Scent, what organizations in your community are doing work like this, and how can you partner with them? And to me, that would be our challenge, is to see where we can fit into this, and then how we can lend our credibility, influence, resources, and perspective to the table as we develop solutions together. Man, we want to hear about what you think, and what actions are you planning on maybe partaking in? We'd love to have that conversation in the comment section. Continue to like, comment, subscribe, tune in each week on your favorite podcast site, and we are out. We'll see you next time in the intersection.